Hi, I'm Gina Thompson. In this video, I'm going to take you through how to use our PTZ plugin panel within Dashboard. This panel relates to both our ROS Pivot Cam and select Sony PTZ models.
So when Dashboard first opens, it opens with a gray screen here. Unless you had it open previously, it might have some tabs there. But when it first opens, it has a gray screen here, and then on the left side, it has your basic tree view, which would be empty except for Dashboard services if you've never used Dashboard before. And then below, File Navigator. If you are familiar with ROS Pivot Cams, then you're familiar with using the File Navigator in order to serve up a panel for the Pivot Cam. That's no longer necessary. You can now do that through your PTZ cameras on the basic tree view. So here I have two cameras already set up in my PTZ camera view. You can see one of them is red and one of them is green. The red means that I am not connected to that, meaning that there's somewhere a break in the connection, meaning that it's not connected to my network, or I'm not connected to the VPN that's on, or whatever it may be. Maybe it's turned off. I don't have access to slot 1. Slot 2 I do. That is what the green stands for, is that this is communicating with Dashboard. So for right now, I'm actually going to remove slot 2 and start that from scratch. So in order to add a PTZ camera to your Dashboard panel, you come up here to this plus sign, click on the plus sign, and then under cameras, if this is closed, it's going to look like this. So under cameras, you would select PTZ camera. Okay, and then you can double click it, or you can click it and click next, and then you put the IP address in that this camera is assigned to. After you select the IP address, underneath is the camera model. At the creation of this video, we only supported the Pivot Cam and Sony BRC cameras. However, that might change in the future, but the process is the same. You would still select camera model and then go from there. Next, you select the display name. I like to have a little bit of fun, so this one's name is Farnsworth. Okay, and then click Finish. Okay, now that it's connected, you can drop down the little caret, and it gives you the option for remote control. So under remote control, you click that, and it's going to serve you up. The very first panel is the presets panel. However, before you start getting overwhelmed by this panel, go ahead and click on config. So these are the operational functions of this camera. So first, let's start with config. On the config panel, you have the main menu panels up here, and then you have the sub menu panels down here. On the very first camera panel, you'll see camera info. So you'll see what you named it, what type of PTZ it is, and then what type of firmware it's running. So here, that's what shows down here, and then the role that it has to play, and your status, your IP, and your port number. Now the role is important if you're going to be using PTZ cameras with Smart Shell. So we have something called a gateway that will allow you to run the PTZ cameras that you're setting up here in Dashboard with Smart Shell. However, that will be in another video. So for now, just to understand that the role here relates to Smart Shell. Now, on the right side, you have camera options. So a couple of things you can do here is turn the power off, adjust the IR settings. So you can either turn IR on or off, and word of caution for doing that, if you turn it off, the remote control will not work. So you will always have to remember the IP address. And what I mean by that is, if for whatever reason you don't have access to the computer that you have it set up on, and you need to get into the camera, if you've turned off IR, then the remote control won't allow you to serve up the menu, and you now have lost the IP address and any way to find it. So be sure that you do write the IP addresses on the cameras, just to be sure, if you ever want to turn off IR, but also write the IP address on the camera anyways, to make sure that you remember it going forward. A couple of other things down here, your ceiling mount. So if you want to mount it upside down, this particular option gives you a place to tell the camera that you are upside down so it can flip the image. Flicker compensation is for LED walls, 2D noise reduction, 3D noise reduction. These are all things that you can adjust from here as well, and variable zoom. Now, video mode, this is where you would set the resolution. So the Pivot Cam SE that I'm working with right now has an option to go all the way up to 1080p. And you can adjust your scan rate here as well. Your frequency, usually 5994 is pretty standard, but you do have options to set it anywhere else. So then you have to click apply changes for it to work. Now on the right side, these are your streaming video. So Pivot Cam SE has a web panel that you can log into in order to see an output through a flash player of the stream. We have a mainstream and a substream. The mainstream is what you would use for the higher resolution 4K stream. Now you can set that up here, and you can enable and disable it here as well. Same with the substream, you can enable and disable it. This is a lower resolution. It's meant for monitoring. So if your site is using an SDI output as well as a streaming output, great, you can totally do that. It basically allows you to have 3 outputs at once, because you have your SDI output, your mainstream one, and your substream, and they can all be in different resolutions if you'd like them to be, and they can all be happening at the same time. So you can set that up here. This is under video mode in your configuration panel. Next, under operation, you have joystick. So if you have a joystick that you have set up to work with dashboard in order to control your Pivot Cam SE, or in any other sort of way, a Sony camera or a Panasonic camera, depending on which type of camera you are using this panel with, you can set it up so that up is up, or up is down, or right is left, left is right, and you can also set up your sensitivity here. Now on the right side, you have the interface options. The interface options are really important for the very first time you set up your PTZ panel. And preset mode and store mode are the 2 most important areas. There's 2 options here. There's panel mode or shot box mode under preset. Panel mode, what that does is allow you to select an area and then select the action you want to do to that. For example, if I have a preset, I can select that where I want to save that preset, and then select store, and then store a new preset. If I want to recall a preset, I could click that preset and then click recall. If you put it in shotbox mode, for example, we'll go ahead and move it over to shotbox mode now. If you put it in shotbox mode, you select the action first, and then you select what you want it to do. Recall is locked on, meaning that I could just keep clicking through here and recall. If these all had presets in them, I could recall all day long. Same with store. If store is selected, then I can select the area that I want to store a shot, click store. If I'll just move the camera a little bit, I could select this area, store a shot, click store. So now I have store locked on. Now if I want to delete these shots I made, I can lock delete on too, and then now these are deleted. It saves the name, but it deletes the shot. So that's what shotbox mode is. It locks the action item down here to what you want to do. So for the point of this video, I'm going to leave it in panel mode. So that means that I select the area and then I select the action. This is up to you. It's completely based on your workflow. If you like it one way or the other, you have the option to swap between, but our suggestion here is that you pick one to train your people with, and just leave it that way going forward so no one's confused, especially if they're used to clicking a preset and then clicking recall. Then if you move it to shotbox mode, they click the preset, it's going to go, and that might not be great if you're on air. Some cameras don't support ID starting at 0, so you might have to start them at 1. And manage presets on the camera and recalling presets from the camera does exactly that. So it allows whatever presets you make here to also be saved in the camera based on how many you can save. So in this case, I have 128 that I can save on my PivotCam SE. If I only had 12, then I would have to change this number to 12. And when I clicked enable here, it would only allow me to have 12 presets on my main page. So I have 128, so I'm going to save it at 128, and I'm going to disable that. But it is nice if you've already used this camera for something else and you're bringing it in to dashboard. It's also nice if you are worried that a camera might go down at some point, or you might lose your computer at some point. If you lose the computer, you know that all those shots are saved to the camera, so you can recall them from the remote or from an external panel. If you lose the camera, what's nice is that you have all the shots saved locally on the computer as well. So log level, this is to help with tech support. So we turn this on normal for for day to day. As you download, the default is normal. So this is if you call in the tech support, we can look through your logs and see what's going on, see if we can find anything that's wrong right away. The next and last sub menu here is the gateway menu, and there's going to be another video to explain this, but there's two different gateways. There's the Visca gateway and the Furio gateway, and what this allows for is Carbonite and or Smart Shell to use dashboard as a sort of server to allow use of these PTZ cameras by all machines. So not only can you use that in Smart Shell, but you could also use it in dashboard. You can also use it on Carbonite, and this is where you would set that up. Now let's go back to our presets menu. Once you have your configuration all set the way that you like it, this is our presets menu. So to start from the top left, you have the name of your camera. So this name is going to relate back to the same name that you made when we first started in the basic tree view. Next, you have the four main menus. So you presets, PTZ, paint, and config. And then next you have status. So this green dot means that I am connected to the camera. You'll see that same green dot on the left hand side here to show me that I'm connected to the camera. If I wasn't connected to that camera, that dot would be red. And also tell you that you can't open the panel when you don't have control over it. So in this case, my slot 1 is the camera named Ottawa. I cannot open that remote panel because I don't have access to it. It's not connected to this. So I'll double click my tab at the top to make this full screen again. So next here is our store options. So you can edit the default options if you want, so that you can make sure that when you recall a shot, it's recalling the same thing every time. This will be your default. Right now my default is to recall focus, not recall exposure, and not recall white balance. But if I want to do those three things, I can, and then you can label it however you'd like. I'll label it after me. So now my defaults are going to always keep focus, exposure, and white balance. Now below here, when I save a preset, so if I come and I save a preset, store preset, save preset 1, and I want to recall exposure and want to recall white balance, click store. Now I can come over here and I can tell it to ignore any of those things. So right now it's in full auto and it's in indoor, which means that that is a global setting. So I'm unable to recall an individual mode when the camera is in a global setting. The only way that I can recall an individual exposure is if I change the mode that the camera is currently in. And in order to change the current exposure mode, I would go to paint and I would change this to manual and put it to whatever I want it to put it to. So I'm just gonna pick a bunch of random numbers. And now when I go back to preset, now it's in manual mode, so it'll allow me to recall that. Or I can decide to ignore that portion. Same with white balance. So right now it's in a global save mode, so it's in indoor. If I change that through the paint menu to manual and just pick whatever I want here, some random numbers. Now when I go back, now it's giving me the option to allow white balance to be recalled or ignore it during the recall. Now again, they have to be in manual modes in order for you to have any sort of ability to recall it differently from one preset to another. So preset 1 might have one type of exposure, preset 2 might have another, but the only way that you're going to be able to recall those separately and individually is if the camera's global setting is in manual. If you stored a bunch of shots in using manual mode, it doesn't make a difference if you have the camera running in full auto, because if you have it running in full auto, it's going to maintain the exposure settings that are set in the auto exposure. It's not going to recall a manually set exposure setting or white balance setting unless manual mode is on. Okay, so that is something we get a lot of questions about. Manual mode must be on for any individual exposure or white balance settings to be recalled individually. Those are global settings for the camera. So the global settings for the camera you can find here in Paint, and they're right here. So mode for the exposure, auto, manual, shutter priority, and iris priority are all different modes, and the only mode that allows you to change the recall from one shot to another is manual mode. And you have to leave the camera in manual mode forever if you want to use those presets going forward. If you save the presets in manual mode and then you move it to full auto, those presets, whatever was saved under exposure, will not recall. Okay, hope that's clear. Also on here you have the ability to delete or manage deleted presets. So for example, I have a couple of presets here that I deleted earlier. They didn't just go away forever. They went into this little trash bin, and if I want to bring them back, I can, or if I want to just delete them all, I can. So select all, discard all. So discard. Now across the bottom, I have my action items. So right now I have preset 1 selected. If I click recall, it's going to recall that shot. If I select preset 2, notice there's nothing saved there, so it's not going to highlight anything under the recall button. It does highlight store and preset options. So if I want to store a new preset, if I want to store a new preset, I can click store here, and now I have a new preset. It's named Gina, and now I have all these other options. Not only can I recall it, but I can delete it. Next one, same thing. Now I'm going to go to edit preset options. So if I want to pick all these things before I save it, I can. So that's my preset options, those same things that you would do up here. Click store, we'll call this 1. And now you have all these options. So if I go back to Gina here, I can now delete it, I can recall it. So go ahead and recall it. It has a bar that shows, it's a progress bar depending on how fast the recall is going to go. One thing you cannot do with this PTZ camera is you cannot control how fast it recalls. It's going to go to that shot as fast as it can. You also cannot control which axis is done first. So the way that the camera works is it's just going to do whatever's the fastest first. So for example, one time you recall it, it might do pan first, then tilt, then zoom, then iris, then focus. Another time you do it, it might do tilt first, then pan, then iris, then zoom. So there's no way to know, going from one shot to another, the order in which the axes will be recalled. Almost always focus is last, which is why we don't recommend the pivot cam to be used as an on-air move. You know, going from preset 1 to preset 2 to preset 3. I wouldn't recommend doing that on air only because you'd never know how the camera is going to react to that preset. It might zoom first, it might pan first, it might tilt first. So just be careful when doing those types of things. Now, last but not least, you have manage banks. So manage banks is this in the top left here, and when you click on that you can see the different bank names. Now you can change them just by clicking them. So if I click bank 1, I can call that morning show. I can add a new bank here, so I can add my bank could be the noon show, And it also tells you how many, what kind of format do you want it to do? Do you want only names? Do you want numbers and names? Do you want 2 lines of names and numbers? And how big do you want your text size? So now you see across the top, I have the morning show with the 3 presets I've already made, and then the noon show with 0 presets, that's empty. You can also export this, so if you want to remember the presets that you have and also remember all of the defaults that you saved for those, you can export it to your computer and it'll save as part of this camera. So I'm going to save it, and I can just put it anywhere on my computer that I find to be convenient, and that just gives you the ability to have a backup in case something happens where all your presets are someone screwed them up and changed everything that you had here. You can just recall what you had set up from the beginning. So I can exit out of that. So that is our preset window. The PTZ window is where you can actually control the movement of your camera. So this crosshair here controls your pan and your tilt. On the right side, you have your iris and your iris, your zoom, and your focus. So right now I have auto iris on. If I turn that off, I can now adjust the iris manually. And you're doing this, and you should be looking at what the camera's doing as you're moving the bars to see if it's where you want it to be. This particular camera has a 20 by digital zoom, and which is actually pretty great because it has a 4K chip. This Pivot Cam SE has a 4K chip, but you're only using the resolution for HD. So you're not going to have the same type of artifacting that you have with a traditional digital zoom, where with normal digital zoom, you're just zooming into the resolution that's already there, where in this particular digital zoom, we're using the full sensor. We're using 4K, so we have much larger resolution to play with. So if you do want to use digital zoom in order to increase the zoom on the camera, I recommend checking it out. It's not as bad as traditionally it was when you would see cameras that use digital zoom. Beneath that, you have sliders for your zoom. And again, you'll see going in and out on your zoom on the lens. Autofocus, I currently have it on. If you turn it off, then you can focus the Pivot Cam here. One push autofocus, what that does is it gives you a real quick focus if you need it. The next panel is our paint panel, and I showed this to you briefly earlier. On the left side you have exposure, and on the right side you have color. Exposure, these are global settings, and what I mean by global settings is when you select one of these, it affects the whole camera. So when you select full auto, that now means that you can't recall any of those manual settings that you created. It doesn't flip between the two, it just stays in that mode. So in this case, if I go to full auto, it's staying in full auto mode. When you're in manual mode, you have the ability to adjust the iris. You can adjust it here, or you can adjust it on this page as well. So there's two places for you to adjust your iris. Shutter and gain are also here to adjust in manual mode. On the right side, you have color. So this is your white balance mode. The Pivot Cam relies 100% on your white balancing, so getting a good white balance is really key to making the picture look good. I suggest setting all the cameras up with the exact same piece of white, so that way they look as close to each other as possible. They look as similar as they possibly can, all the colors do. And you can do this with auto white balance. Now, it does have a manual option if you need to use it, but it only gives you red and blue gain in order to adjust in that manual option. Your green is going to be through your luminance or through your iris. So as you adjust your iris, you'll see that your colors may shift a little bit as you add more green. Now, sodium lamp, fluorescent, these are all just other options that you can use in your white balance mode. You also have down here the ability to open your on-screen menu. You can do that here. You can also do it here in the config page. So you have that ability in 2 places. This does come in handy if you lose the remote and need to get in to adjust the IP address. All right, and the config menu I'd already gone over. If you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to any of us and to any people in tech support, any of us at Ross, and we can help you out, get you to the right people.